Welcome back to the calibration project. After my previous video, Clues to the Past from Geology, one of the viewers left some very interesting and insightful comments, and today I'm going to walk through those comments in some more detail. So here's the first question, and it's related to the formation of the Grand Canyon. So the comment was, cement it cracks. Could some of Earth's geofeatures be caused by this phenomenon, shrinkage? Now my response that it's not dominant in that area is related to primarily the patterns. This is a picture here, but the pattern that we see here for these shrinkage cracks doesn't match the pattern that we see for the canyons. So perhaps shrinkage might play a role, but if so, it's far surpassed by the forces of erosion that are at work. The primary force acting in here is not shrinkage, but rather erosion. Moving on to the second question. As I was reading your comment section, another thought came to mind. It's a bit wild, but during the global flood, maybe sometime afterwards, maybe the moon's pull, or its pull aligning with other large celestial bodies, had a larger effect on Earth than now. Maybe there were much larger pulls changing the shape of the Earth, such that things happened even more powerfully that don't happen now. And I responded first of all by thanking, because this really did connect a couple dots in my mind that I'll explain in a little bit more detail here. And the first, the catastrophic plate tectonics, or CPT theory. In the CPT model, the activity of the plate motion is declining, along with the resulting effects like earthquakes and fault movement. The Earth is going from a very stable condition prior to the Genesis flood, and from that very stable condition, that stability is disrupted, which then provides the driving force for the Genesis flood, resulting at the end to a moderately unstable condition where the plates are still in motion, which we see that today. But at the end of the flood, things are still a lot more unstable than they are today. And I had never actually pieced that together myself, that yes, there is research showing that when the moon and planets align, the gravitational pull can have noticeable and measurable effects on the Earth. But those effects would have been even more as things were still settling down at the end of the flood, especially looked at from the perspective of catastrophic plate tectonics, wherein gravity is the overall driving force causing the motion of the plates. Moving on to the third question, this is related to meander formation, specifically related to the goosenecks formation in southern Utah. I have looked at this region myself. I think that it's a very interesting area to look at, and I've spent quite a bit of time in Google Earth looking at this area. My initial response is that I don't think that the process of creek meanders that I illustrated in 9 Mile Canyon during my previous video was at work in shaping the goosenecks, but I do have some ideas. I think that in order to properly understand these individual formations, we need to first take a step even further back and consider when in the overall process these formations came about. When we look at the geological column, where is the start and the end of the flood? There are two main ideas in creationist thinking. Some scientists look at the geological column and place the end of the flood down low and say that many of the higher layers would have been laid down after the flood in more local processes, while others look at the geological column and place the end of the flood high, saying that almost all of the layers that we see occurred during the flood. Personally, I think that the evidence is more compelling for the higher level, the higher end of the flood boundary, and I'll refer you to a book by Timothy Clary from the Institute of Creation Research. The book is Carved in Stone: Geological Evidence of the Worldwide Flood. I think his description is the most compelling that I have heard. And I'm also going to put a link to a video where he talks through this and explains it in some detail. But piggybacking on that here for the goosenecks, My opinion is that the formation is similar in timeline to that of the Grand Canyon. I don't necessarily think that it is formed or was formed by the water rushing off of the continents back into the sea, but rather as the water level is dropping, various ridges are backing up the flow of the water. These series of ridges are causing it to make these back and forth formations. And as we go from starting upstream and we move downstream, we can see a similar pattern form multiple times all the way up to the Grand Canyon. We see essentially a basin with a straighter stream that then, as it gets to a ridge, starts to meander back and forth before crossing the ridge and then straightening out again. And I think looking at these patterns, it'll give us a starting point to do some additional, more detailed research and come up with more of a model for how these may have been formed. The next question here, how important do you think earthquakes are in the formation of canyons? Have you watched the YouTube video showing the canyon that was formed in 2023 quake in Turkey? I did take a look at that video, and I wasn't aware of that prior, so thank you for pointing this out to me. And I do think that earthquakes are a legitimate explanation for some canyons. The 2 points that I like to point out in my videos revolve around sequence and scale, and the understanding that landforms are dominated by large events, and then subsequent smaller events have a lesser and lesser impact. So the surface cracks that we see in the 2023 Turkey earthquake, those are a secondary effect of a larger fault system in the region. After the earthquake, from that point forward, the subsequent erosion and deposition will continue to shape that landscape in that region on a progressively smaller and smaller scale within that new canyon. I think that earthquakes do provide an explanation for some canyons, but again, going back to the patterns, if we look at the Grand Canyon, I don't think that an earthquake is an adequate explanation for that. The patterns that we see there primarily relate to erosion. I hope this clears up a few things. Thanks for watching.